So he's gone with the Freeze Mage here, and there are two matchups remaining that are very powerful for Freeze Mage. Freeze Mage preying on these mid-range Shamans that have risen in popularity since the nerf to some of the more aggressive Shaman cards. One of the big things that has really caused, Freeze Mage to come back into prominence. Suddenly Laughing is a happy man with an 80% win rate again because of all these mid-range Shamans on the ladder. So GeorgeC picking up the early Doomsayer and a Frostbolt as well as some early cycles. So this is a strong-looking hand to counteract what Shaman wants to do.
Yep, Nicslay does have some good cards against it. For example, he has a Ragnar's Firelord in his deck, which generally is extremely powerful against the Freeze Mage. It's one of those things that you can't freeze. On turn 8, the Freeze Mage will be freezing unless he's already like killing you or something. But normally that's one of those turns where you're freezing. But Ragnaros is pretty much just charging 8 damage effectively because there's not that many minions on the board, and freezing it doesn't really do anything. So it's a great card to have. Nicslay also playing 1 copy of Bloodlust, so he might be, there we see it in his hand right now, so he might be able to get a lot of damage in early on with that if he manages to, let's say, get a board of 3 minions to not get frozen.
That was just a fascinating little moment there for Nicslay on turn 1. He obviously with no play to make on turn 1, he waited several seconds there before skipping turn, which we've seen many people do, but Nicslay actually just sat there with his eyes closed for a moment there, just looking as if he was trying to compose himself in this high-pressure situation.
Yep. Haven't seen any nervous plays from him, at least. I think he's playing really well. GeorgeC just dropping that Doomsayer here. He knows that Nicslay is running 2 copies of Hex, so keeping the Doomsayer for the Nova Doomsayer combination is very unreliable. Yep. Also, worth pointing out that he didn't really have another play to do there. Like pointing out the barrier doesn't really get you anywhere or so.
Yeah, Novice Engineer picked up now for following turns if he wants to cycle some more, and Nicslay not really looking at the board development plays that he would want at this point in time. Manatide Totem is okay to be kind of irritating in the mid-game against Freeze Mage and potentially draw some more resources, but not doing anything to mount the pressure here, and this is the problem the mid-range Shaman can often have, which is just not being aggressive enough early enough to push through.
Yeah, to be fair, the decklist is not running a single 4-mana card, so it's gonna be expected that the turn 4 might not be that spectacular. Oh, just gonna go for the Maelstrom Portal, throwing it away, and recognize that it's not that great of a card, so he's using it to play a 2-mana 1/1. Well, could have been Tunnel Jock.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some 10-mana 2/1s in this tournament so far, so 2-mana 1/1 not looking too bad, but yeah, he needed some sort of board presence. He wants something to be able to push through Flame Tongue damage on a following turn, and also Maelstrom Portal can actually be to your detriment to use in some situations if, say, there's an Acolyte of Pain on the board, so it's not necessarily something you can get value out of against Freeze Mage.
Yeah, I think that was a good play from Nicslay, trying to get 2 minions on the board. I mean, he did get 2 minions, but 2 minions to stick on the board. Unfortunately, that will not happen because that could be pinged off. But Flame Tongue, Manatide, pretty solid for turn 5. Blood Mage sounds okay, so GeorgeC just wants to get his cycle. Not trying to get more value out of his Blood Mage, but this is likely to be another Maelstrom Portal now from Nicslay.
Yeah, Maelstrom Portal looks pretty attractive in this situation, but Nicslay has to then make the decision of whether he wants the mana-efficient and resource-heavy play of the Manatide Totem, or whether he wants to start pushing damage with the Flame Tongue Totem to back that up. But again, I think Portal will be used this turn purely for the reasons we talked about before. It's a difficult card to use in this matchup, and this is about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, it's tempting to try to get the Manatide on the board, but then those 1/1s are... The Flame Tongue is happening no matter what. I don't think there's any question about it. That you want to get the damage in, but so the card draw from Manatide would be tempting too. But yeah, I like the Maelstrom here. Like, you're never gonna get to use it better, and pushes 5 damage here. A little bit unfortunate that he can't choose the positioning on the Maelstrom Portal minion. It always spawns to the right side. He would have loved to have it on the left side because the 3/1 might not survive. Barrier, ping off the 3/1. Pretty solid play. Only going to be 4 power on the board from Nicslay, and this slow start from Nicslay, it's going to be really tough for him to win the game.
Yeah, the slow start combined with the Doomsayer draw from GeorgeC has meant that Nicslay has essentially started his game on turn 4 here, which is playing right into the Freeze Mage's hand, and GeorgeC here has all the tools that he didn't have in the last game against the mid-range Hunter, all those mid-game board freezes that he needs to buy time, and plenty of damage building up as well behind the Alexstrasza Fireball and an Ice Lance already in hand.
Yeah, I feel like in order for Nicslay to win the game, GeorgeC needs to drop the ball real bad and maybe let Nicslay Bloodlust next turn if GeorgeC draws, let's say, another barrier. Excuse me, I only place one barrier. If it draws like a card draw, goes for the ice block and another card draw, or like or some kind of play that does not involve freezing, because then Nicslay would get all that value from the Bloodlust. GeorgeC, as long as he freezes, he'll be good.
Indeed, and I'm sure there will be a freeze coming out this turn, because even if GeorgeC isn't planning around specifically Bloodlust, it's just the Thunderbluff turn, right? You do not want all these totems attacking with initiative from the Thunderbluff Valiant, so GeorgeC, it will be a pretty catastrophic mistake for him to make there if he didn't choose to freeze the board. Yeah,
but GeorgeC, experienced Freeze Mage player, he knows what he's doing, not taking any chances there. Also, his hand is stacked with freeze. He has a second Blizzard and a Frost Nova, so very safe to just use it there. Sometimes we see players, when they only have, let's say, one freezing card in their hand, kind of try to save it as much as they can, but this is not one of those times. Just gonna use it, and the Mana Tide, yeah, does survive, but it's not that big of a deal. Nickslay's card draw, I don't think it's a huge deal. I don't think GeorgeC cares too much about the Mana Tide. In many matchups, the Mana Tide is one of the higher priority targets to remove. You know that your opponent getting free cards, you're gonna lose the value game, but this is not really going to be a value game.
Certainly is, especially looking at GeorgeC's hand already. All he really needs to do is stall another couple of turns here, and he just has that big offensive swing with Alexstrasza. And against Shaman, a class that really does not heal, apart from the extreme control decks that start packing in Healing Wave, then the offensive Alexstrasza can pretty much just be a game lockout if you have the Ice Block protected behind it already.
Yeah, another freeze coming in here. I think it's just choose to do whatever. This might be the Ice Block turn. Could the Blizzard be better? I guess the Nova is fine. Just go for that and the Ice Block. He would also maybe consider playing like a Loot Hoarder. The Arcane Intellect doesn't work, because then he would overdraw his next beginning of the turn card.
Yeah. He can choose to Blizzard this turn and then go Nova, block, Loot Hoarder the next turn, but then your coin is kind of stranded. You know, your coin isn't really doing anything at that point. So yeah, I don't mind this play at all. Could have even chosen to coin out the Loot Hoarder here, but honestly, this gives him just the coin Alexstrasza option next turn if he picks up the damage that he needs to push through. So
yeah, Nicslay, if he was to draw his Ragnar's this turn, it would have been huge.
That's true.
Because no minions are getting through at this point until it's going to be too late, but the Rag would have been an out for him, dealing that 8 immediate damage, potentially another 8 on the following turn. Maybe with something like a Spirit Claw from the top and combining that with Spell Power.
I guess that is actually the only concern about GeorgeC choosing to leave the Mana Tide up this game, is that, you know, anytime you're Freeze Mage and you're playing against a deck that has Ragnaros in it, Ragnaros is just so much better than any other card in their deck against you that sometimes you feel like you want to limit their card draw, but GeorgeC didn't really have too much of an option to kill it. Like, the board freezes were just too efficient for him this game to turn down. And there he is! One card late!
Wow. That's unfortunate.
What a difference a card makes, Savitz. If that was one card higher up in the deck, and this could have been a very different story, but now George just has all the time in the world going with the Blizzard into Loot Hoarder line this turn.
It's still like, it's not even that good, because
now it's just a bad Rag, yeah.
Now the Loot Hoarder is kind of ruining it, and it's too late. Even if it hits face twice, it might still not be enough. There's that Ice Block. There's a second Ice Block in GeorgeC's hand. Has a bunch of burn.
Yeah, there actually isn't a good outcome for the Ragnaros here. In this specific situation, because even if the Rag hits face still, then offensive Alexstrasza comes down, and the Loot Hoarder connecting for the extra 2 actually just gives GeorgeC auto, because he has the 13 damage in hand to follow it up. So
that is true. So if you Nicslay here...
Oh, sorry, that's a Forgotten Torch in hand. That's not the Roaring Torch. Yeah, never mind. So not quite that much damage, but still, the extra 2 being pushed from the Loot Hoarder, if it lives, is still a big deal after Alex comes down.
It looks like Nicslay maybe going for a Mana Tide here. What would be a great draw from him for him? I guess Spirit Claws maybe would help him push a little bit of damage, but there's like you said earlier, there's no healing in that list. Nicslay choosing just to hex the Loot Hoarder and hope that the Freeze Mage is kind of gonna defeat itself at this point by not drawing the important cards. Maybe if there was no Alexstrasza in GeorgeC's hand just yet, he would be okay, and cutting the extra draw from the Loot Hoarder would kind of like delay the Alexstrasza for an additional turn to give him a chance. But there's the Alex, and he could just go for it here, honestly. I think he'll be fine. He'll have next turn to maybe play the second ice block if the first one somehow got popped. Yeah,
so he doesn't have the damage in his hand right now, but his chance to draw it is so high percentage because... Well, so first off, his block has to go down immediately, which is likely. There's 14 damage in play, plus another 6 from the Thunder Bluff. So
maybe drawing is better and just like torch the Totem Golem. Because if you torch the Totem Golem, there's almost no way for Nicslay to pop the block. I think, because 25 HP,
right,
Bloodlust, Lightning Bolt, it's pretty tough, so just going for maybe like Arcane Intellect, Forgotten Torch.
So I don't mind this. Like, GeorgeC will have calculated his percentages here, and, you know, you can basically do this in the other order now, which is to say, next turn I can do some combination of Arcane Intellect plus Acolyte draws, plus play the second Ice Block if necessary, and then after that, you know, I still have draws available to me the next turn after my second block goes down. So you have such a high percentage chance of drawing additional damage from your deck at this point that I'm sure GeorgeC has calculated his outs. He knows the exact number of cards left and the exact contents of his deck and all kinds of things that we haven't been keeping perfect track of. So I'm sure he knows the right line here.
There's so many cards he can draw. It's incredible. He did use like one Frostbolt on an early turn, I believe. I'm actually not even sure if he did. But in any case, Arcane Intellect with that Ice Block, or maybe torching first, torching his opponent first to increase the chance of picking up the Roaring Torch with Arcane Intellect. Yeah, Nicslay popping the block here, dealing with Alexstrasza. What is the most efficient way to do this? So Bloodlust, I believe, is required to get this all done. Oh man.
If you Bloodlust, you can also Hero Power and you can also Hex, but that's like, you don't actually need all that damage to be able to push through, so he might be able to preserve the Hex here. I think this might be a situation from Nicslay where he just hasn't really seen anything better, so he's just gone for the guaranteed option ahead of him just to make sure he gets something effective done, but definitely some better options that turn in terms of popping the block more efficiently. It was a pop at 6, there was a Hex used that didn't necessarily have to be used. So yeah, Nicslay, obviously, as you can see on his face, not particularly happy with the way that turn was played out, but it probably ends up being a formality based on GeorgeC's hand anyway.
Pretty much. GeorgeC can just choose how to do it. I would like to see the Torch first, then go for the Arcane Intellect, then for the Ice Block, improving his chance to pick up the Roaring Torch.
Yep. If he draws a 2-mana card draw at that point as well, he can still coin it out. He can have an 11-mana turn this turn due to holding the coin. So.
Alright, so he's going for the Ice Block first.
It's getting played this turn regardless, I can tell you that much. It looks like he's just going to commit the burn right now and just rely on draw next turn. So he's pushing through, setting him to 6, and this means next turn he can Arcane Intellect. If Arcane Intellect whiffs, he will have 7 mana available to him, which means he can't then Acolyte and ping afterwards to try and find the Fireball.
A little bit surprised by that, but it should be fine.
Actually, no, he can still Acolyte, ping, and pick up the Roaring Torch that he's just put in the deck and then coin that out. So he does, he has a lot of outs the next turn.
Yeah, no real, no mistakes here. I think that the one mistake that he could have done if he wasn't GeorgeC, if he was a little bit less experienced player, was to maybe use the card draw first and then go for the Torch, and that would kind of reduce his chances of picking up the extra burn. But are there more? There we go.
Frostbolt will do it, so will Evolved Kobold. George loves this card. He's going to bring him out on the board on any given opportunity. Frostbolt Ice Lance, massive overkill. Could have just used the ping, but GeorgeC does get the Freeze Mage shape